Today I am going to show you how to make an image tweet using a semi-transparent gradient in Illustrator. So the first thing we have to do is create a new document, which I do by pressing Command N. Give it a name that makes it easy for you to understand later on when you go to look at your files. The width is 124 pics, the height is 512 pics, the color mode is RGB, and the raster effects we can put as 150 ppi. The next thing to do is to create some layers. So here you see there's a default layer. So if I double click on that, I can change the name and just hit enter to finalize it. Next one I'll make gradient, and the next one I'll make text. So now I'm going to save this image. As an EPS, and just click OK. And now I need to create some margins in the same way that we learned how important grids are for your assignments. They're just as important for image tweets. So the easiest way of doing this is to hit Command and curly quotes. Now if I zoom in, see there's this nice grid that I can use as a basis for my margins. And if I hit Command R, then the rulers come up and I can drag guides out. So what's this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll make them 5 segments in, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 segments down, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yours don't have to be 5 segments in, just they need to be consistent on all sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I press Command 0, then I get my page neatly positioned in the center of my screen. So the next thing I should do maybe is I'll add my text by drawing a text box that is inside the margins. And then I have my quote here, so I'll copy that and bring it over here, and then I'll change the typeface to something I like the look of. Change the kerning to optical always. The type's probably too big now. I don't really like that font for this quote. There we go, much better. So if I choose the black arrow and click, you'll see there's a green, the text box is green, and that's because it's on the text layer. And if I wanted to move it to a different layer, I could click on this little dot and then it becomes red. That means that it's been moved to the gradient layer. So I'll move it back up to the text layer, and now I'll make a gradient. Oh, I need to choose a color. I like this kind of rich grey. So I copy that. And I think I'll make my text that color. And I think I'll make my gradient white. It's up to you what is black, what is white, and what is the color you choose. For me, I think this will work best. So I have my nice color grey for the text, and then I'll make a white gradient. So I'll double click here, change that to white, and then if I click on this gradient tab, and I have this little slider thing here. So what does this all mean? It's similar to Gravit. We want a white gradient, not a black one. So if I double click here and click white, and then see how it also has an option for opacity down here. If I change the opacity here to 0, then you can see from the visibility of the grid behind that what I've done is created a gradient that goes from full white to semi-transparent to nothing at all. So I think I will do that. Oh. Oh. There we go. So what I did was just duplicated this one . So now I have two gradients going in opposite directions. You can have your gradients going whichever way you like. It just depends on how big your quote is, how busy your image is, depending on where your gradient goes. But the purpose of the gradient is to provide an area on the image that is less busy, gets rid of some visual noise so that it's easier to read the quote, and also it draws attention to the quote area on the image. So now I'll go to my images in this stocksnap.io. So I've done a search for forest here. You can choose any landscape kind of term you like. It could be beach or ocean or desert or whatever interests you and is relevant to your quote. So I think I'm going to use this one. So the dimensions say that it's really huge, so that's good. Oh no, we don't want that add thing. So I'll save the image somewhere I can find it later. And by giving it a similar name to the EPS file, it means they'll always come up in my searches together, which is pretty handy. So we'll go back to Illustrator, go File, Place. Now if I zoom out by pressing Command minus, then I get to see the whole image. I can drag it in to be roughly the size of my page. And see how it's ended up on the text layer? I can change that really easily by clicking on this little square and dragging down to the photo layer. Now it's automatically behind. And see this crossed box? We can get rid of that by clicking Embed and then saving. And I really like the road in this photo, so I'm going to bring that up. And then I think I'll center this. As you all know, I'm not really a fan of centering generally, but this particular image lends itself to centered text because all of the attention in the image is drawn to the center. Most images are not like that. So I'll increase the spacing here. So now to get an idea of what it will look like when it's finished, I'll get rid of the guidelines by pressing Command and colon. I think it looks pretty good. To give you an idea of the purpose of the gradient, I'll click off this little eye of visibility of the gradient. Much harder to read. Even if the text was white, it's still very busy. So the gradient just gives you a little bit of a canvas for putting your text and bringing attention to it. So last week we used the gradient to extend an image. The gradient is also valuable if you have an image that's large enough but you want to place some text somewhere on the image, because it draws attention to the image and creates a nice area of lower visual noise on the photograph. Alright, so I'm happy with that. So I save it many times as I go. And then finally, I save for web. Choose PNG 24. Transparency doesn't really matter in this case. And click save. And so now I've got the PNG, the EPS and the JPEG And you want to drag all of those to your Google Drive. It's very important to save all of your working files and keep a copy of them, not just the PNG. So now I'll open that just to double check that everything looks fine. Not bad. I think that's a pretty good first go. So as we can see, the things to check for is that the image goes all the way to the edge, the text is easy to read, the gradient looks nice and smooth. If you set the settings in a way that is not correct, sometimes the gradient looks very jagged. But I can help you with that in class or your lab instructor if your lab instructor is not me. Alright, so that's it for this assignment. Good luck and see you in the lecture.